After decades of prolific parodying and lyric lampooning, Weird Al Yankovic has become synonymous with spoof songs. But he hasn't been in the spotlight as much lately. If you're wondering what he's been up to, here's why you haven't heard from Weird Al in a while. From an early age, it was clear that Alfred Matthew Yankovic didn't quite fit the mold. He was a nerdy kid who delighted in comedy, TV, and magazines that showcased an absurd sense of humor. He also had an accordion that his parents bought for him from a traveling salesman.
It's not the babe magnet that you think it would be. No.
Yankovic didn't always think he'd eventually make a living off comedy music. Instead, he studied architecture at California Polytechnic State University, a pursuit he lost interest in after 3 years. Weird Al was initially a derogatory nickname his fellow dorm residents gave him. He had a hard time fitting in with his peers, but he eventually struck up a lifelong friendship with his dorm mate, Joel Miller. And his knack for comedic songwriting was clear to Dr. Demento, the DJ he idolized as a teenager. In fact, Weird Al wrote a song about the Yankovic family car that Dr. Demento immediately played on his show. But it was My Bologna, a parody of the Knack's 1979 hit, My Sharona, which he recorded inside a restroom that really kick-started his career. It was the biggest hit song on Dr. Demento's show, and it also led to Yankovic signing his first ever record contract with Capitol Records. Yankovic's subsequent hits, particularly 1984's Eat It, propelled his rise to stardom as a parodist specializing in wholesome and food-related tunes. This also paved the way for him to co-write and star in the 1989 movie UHF, which lampooned local cable access TV. Unfortunately, a combination of mixed critical reception and strong competition in the form of movies like Batman and Ghostbusters 2 turned it into a commercial failure, although it's since become a cult classic. This resulted in an early 90s career slump for Yankovic. In an attempt to bounce back, he thought about writing a food-based parody of Michael Jackson's Black or White, but the pop superstar refused to grant Yankovic permission. And while this felt like a setback at first, it ultimately became the catalyst for a career revival. At the time, the alternative rock scene was set to explode with the arrival of Nirvana, and Yankovic hit upon the idea of parodying their hit song, Smells Like Teen Spirit. When he called frontman Kurt Cobain to ask for permission, Cobain asked what it would be about. When Yankovic told him he'd poke fun at their unintelligible lyrics, Cobain thought it sounded funny, and gave him the go-ahead. Smells Like Nirvana ended up earning Yankovic a spot on the top 40, a gold certification for his album, and even a Grammy nomination. One notable thing about Weird Al is that he secures permissions from the artist before he parodies. This isn't legally necessary, as parody songs fall under fair use, but Yankovic prefers to have his inspirations in on the joke instead of giving them the impression that he's making fun of them. Unsurprisingly then, he's established a reputation as one of the nicest people in the industry.
I don't necessarily have to legally, but that's one of the reasons I think I've been able to hang around as long as I have, is I don't burn bridges and I want to make sure they're in on the joke.
If you think the real Weird Al is as rambunctious as his onstage persona, think again. In a 2020 article in the New York Times, his wife Suzanne shared a story about how they almost didn't meet because of this misperception. She was a high-ranking film executive at the time, who mistakenly believed that Yankovic didn't have an off switch. But as it turned out, the introverted Yankovic was, and still is, quiet, reserved, and incredibly courteous. He also has a reputation for never losing his temper. Furthermore, he steers clear of drugs and alcohol, and never even swears. As he told on Milwaukee, since 1992 he's been sticking to a mostly vegetarian diet, with the occasional cheat meal here and there. So in many ways, he's just a regular, not all that Weird Al. A major personal tragedy befell Al Yankovic on April 9th, 2004. At the time, he was touring in support of a new album when his parents Nick and Mary Yankovic passed away from carbon monoxide poisoning inside their home. Al put out an official statement for his fans, in which he explained that it resulted from accidentally leaving the flue closed while they were using their fireplace. He also shared that he learned the news from his wife before any news agencies could pick up the story. Despite this tragedy, Yankovic decided to continue the tour, though he cancelled all of his interview commitments and meet and greets with fans. He felt that since his music had brought so much joy to his listeners, continuing to perform could help him get through this as well. He paid tribute to his parents during one performance, with the dedication projected on the screens at the back of the stage. In a 2014 interview with Dan Rather, Yankovic admitted that he'd certainly expected that he would outlive his parents, but he didn't think they would pass away at the same time. He also noted that he continues to feel the pain of the loss years later. Among the handful of artists who have refused Weird Al's parody requests, the most infamous was perhaps the late Prince. During a 2016 appearance on The Howard Stern Show, Yankovic revealed that despite multiple attempts to ask for permission, Prince always refused, without offering any reason. Prince's office even once wrote to him to tell him not to make eye contact with the performer during an awards night where they'd be seated near each other.
The only person that's really consistently said no has been Prince.
Another noteworthy instance of an artist refusing to be parodied was Lady Gaga, or so it seemed. In a 2011 blog post, Yankovic shared a story of how he'd reached out to her camp with an idea for a Born This Way parody, the profits of which would be donated to the Human Rights Campaign. At first, Gaga's manager said that she didn't grant her permission, but Yankovic decided to simply upload the song to YouTube so that everyone could enjoy it for free. But as it turned out, Gaga's manager had lied, as he didn't even bother showing her the parody. She in fact actually liked the song, and she quickly gave Yankovic the thumbs up to release a video for it after she assessed it herself. One reason why Weird Al may seem inactive lately is because he hasn't released a new album since 2014. In an interview that year with The Guardian, he talked about how he received no funding from his record label to make the music videos for what would turn out to be his last album, Mandatory Fun. So he instead tried a different approach, in which he partnered up with Yahoo, YouTube, Vivo, and other internet portals to release one platform-exclusive song and video per day in exchange for funding. Mandatory Fun turned out to be an unprecedented success, as it was Yankovic's first LP to reach the #1 spot on the Billboard 200. Interestingly enough, it was also the first comedy album to enter the chart immediately at #1, selling 104,000 copies in its first week. Since the album also marked the end of Yankovic's contract with his record label, he ultimately decided to forego the album model and simply release his songs online immediately upon their completion. While speaking with the Washington Times in 2016, he also revealed his plans to stick to either a singles or EP format for his new releases. Back in 2003, Weird Al's fans started campaigning for him to get his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. They formed the Weird Al Star Fund, with the aim of collecting enough money to pay for the creation and the maintenance of Yankovic's star. When they started, a star cost only $15,000, but by the time Yankovic was inducted, the price had risen to $40,000. Yankovic made it to the list of inductees in 2018, receiving the honor for his accomplishments as a recording artist. According to the Hollywood Walk of Fame's website, he officially became the 2,643rd recipient of the Walk of Fame star. At his induction ceremony, he demonstrated his signature humor as he begged spectators, "I'm sorry I even have to say this. I don't want to even have to ask this. But please don't pickaxe my star, okay guys? I know it's all the rage these days, but that's not cool. Just please don't do that." Earlier that year, Donald Trump's star had been vandalized by a man carrying a pickaxe in the guitar case. In classic Weird Al fashion, though, Yankovic clarified that spitting and urinating were fair game. From June to September of 2019, Yankovic and his band performed in various locales across North America as part of the Strings Attached concert series. This was Yankovic's 16th tour since 1983. According to his official website, he and his band have performed a total of 67 shows in 64 venues, referred to as their biggest and most elaborate tour ever. It featured a live symphony orchestra at every location and made extensive use of the performers' countless costumes and props. Additionally, Yankovic performed his older, more well-known parody songs during the tour, whereas in his previous tour, the ridiculously self-indulgent Ill-Advised Vanity Tour, he had mostly played his lesser-known original tunes. After having played over 1,000 live shows over the course of his career, Yankovic decided that it was the right time for a hiatus. As of 2021, he hasn't released any official announcements regarding if or when he and his bandmates are planning another tour. Though the general public may not have heard much from Weird Al recently, there's still a good chance that they've heard his voice in some capacity. As his official website notes, he's appeared on, quote, a huge number of podcasts, but what's especially interesting, as far as this particular medium is concerned, is the sheer number of podcasts dedicated entirely to discussing all things Weird Al. There's a weekly show called Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, which has released over 100 episodes worth of interviews and discussions about the singer's life. There's also the We're All Yankovics podcast, which discusses every single Weird Al song one episode at a time. The Weird Alphabet does the same thing, but in alphabetical order. And then there's Weird Al Yankovic, which is hosted by two millennial siblings who are passionate about two things, Weird Al songs and beer. And it's not just the podcasts that are devoted to Weird Al. 2020 saw the release of no less than 3 books all about him. Nathan Rabin's The Weird Accordion to Al, Lily Hirsch's Weird Al Seriously, and John Bermuda Schwartz's Black and White and Weird All Over. Yankovic promoted each of the books with his signature dry wit during an interview with the Rolling Stone, as he declared, "I don't know how to describe it, but I just felt a real personal connection with all of them. Due to Weird Al Yankovic's touring hiatus, it may be a while before his fans see him in the flesh again. That's not to say that he hasn't been busy though. For one thing, he narrated Tiny Tim, King for a Day, a documentary about the famous American ukulele player that was released in April 2021. Yankovic greatly admired the musician, and he read out his letters and passages from his diary for the film.
This guy is very weird. He's a very strange man.
Yankovic also appeared as a talking head in another 2021 music documentary, The Sparks Brothers, which is about the quirky pop rock duo Sparks and was directed by Edgar Wright. As for new parody songs, fans might have to wait a little longer. While talking to Billboard in 2019, he shared that his songwriting pace has become considerably slower. But for someone with his staying power, that shouldn't be too much of a problem. As he described himself in a 2012 Forbes interview, "I just do what I do, and thankfully, people haven't gotten completely sick of me yet."
Soup's on.
Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite musicians are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.